We're live. I've got my blackberry ginger soju, and we need to talk about TU MAMA TAMBIEN. So, right off the bat, this is one of my favoriteest movies. It's in my top 4 right now. If I'm trying to be picky, it always stays there. That and The Incredibles. And I just got through watching it for maybe the 5th time in like 2 years. It's almost like a comfort movie, even though it makes me terribly sad, in a way. So, we'll get right to it. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is which is a very pressing question in the movie. The narrator kind of giving you little hints and shots of things is very fun, but the biggest reveal to me, when you see it the first time, when you see it the second time, when you see it the third time, fourth, fifth, you call it, is her visit to the doctor at the beginning. The narrator just kind of fills us in on like little side things. We'll talk more about that later, but I listened to the questionnaire that she's filling out in the lobby, and I'm smiling. It's awful. It's so heavy, but it's so like perfect that we get to hear what she's filling out before we don't hear anything with the doctors. And the question is, like, are you a fully realized woman? And I think this question weighs on her for the bulk of the movie, if not all of it, right? And it kind of weighs on us. As you see it subsequent times, it weighs on you even more because you kind of know the gravity of the situation that she's dealing with. There's this incessant kind of need to be known. She needs to put herself out there. We talk about her at the dinner scenes with her douchebag boyfriend, from the narrator. And it's this idea of, and she talks about it a lot, of like, what will you leave behind? You know, she doesn't want to focus on death. She wants to know how she'll be remembered, and she'd love to be remembered. And I think part of that is getting out there and doing this road trip with these kids. These all kind of tie together, all of my my little sections, my little title cards. But, you know, within this questionnaire, and I was trying to find the screenplay so I could write down all the specific questions, but I couldn't find it in time, and it's late. It's how do you lash out, you know? So a fully realized woman, fully realized person, you know, we can sub that in here. I just used the exact verbiage from the questionnaire, is you maybe wouldn't lash out, right? But the impending, you know, death, the realization of like mortality, you're going to like lash out, you know. How are you going to deal with these facts of life? The fact that there's an end to it, you know. Legacy, dreams, memories. She's worried about all of these. She wants to be remembered in a certain way. She's sharing. It's so rough, but like, you know, her becoming a dental assistant, and the kids are asking her, oh, like, why did you do that? Like, I know you didn't dream of that. And there's just this like very real kind of weight on all of these conversations that you don't get until you watch it like the second time, and you know what they don't know. There's like a really good sense of dramatic. It's like irony in a way. It's dramatic irony, but it's, you know, as soon as you know, it destroys me when I watch it, when I know what she knows. And Mr. Tinoch and Julio don't. It's rough. It's like the parts of us that we kind of shed off like chrysalis style when we change into the beautiful butterfly, you know? Obviously, we're going to talk about all the rest of that, but we get the sense of that with like old Mexico in the background, and we're watching it modernized. We're watching a lot of these old like bits and pieces of time, like these vestiges of the countryside, El Campo, dude, childhood, all these things kind of get shed off. And for her, it's life. She's seen all that pass her by. And what's cool is like she's an outsider. She's from Spain, so her accent's funny too, because she does the lisp. But I forget that kind of she's experiencing this Mexican countryside and all this stuff for the first time with us, is what it seems like. And I do want to just come out and say, Maribel Verdú, wow, this is my favorite performance, my favorite actress performance in any movie ever. as of now. I watched A Woman Under the Influence. I watched Piano Teacher. Very good. 2 thumbs up. Not quite this. There is so many levels to this. And it's what I would say about the true 6 out of 5 is like the rewatchability. But there's something too about acting that powerfully that when I go back and I know what the actress knows, I know what the character knows, you see new things. Like you see the nuance in the performance, and you see certain facial tics when she knows what's going on. You understand more these like crazy phone calls that are happening between the middle of this ridiculous like sex, 3-way road trip. It starts to make so much sense that it hurts. Like these characters are so human, and Homegirl just knocks it out of the park clean. Obviously, I'm forgetting their names. Gail and Diego are beasts, and they continue to be beasts in their careers. And it's really fun to see like their chemistry on screen as like real life best friends. But she's like the centerpiece of this to me. Obviously, as you watch it more and more times, like you get to know that she has this, the cancer diagnosis, and you know that she's carrying this with her, and it's an awful thing to carry, like the gravity of this. We're all going to die, right? We're all terminal in a way, but for her, it's so much more in her face, right? After the diagnosis, it's this decision to go on this road trip with these kids that you probably have no business going on. There's a lot going on. Like there's a lot of layers to that. But her kind of exploring the what could have been, and her exploring this forgiveness in the midst of like facing death is so nuts to me. Like it makes me cry multiple times in the movie with her douchebag boyfriend, who that guy plays a really good, like pitiful douchebag, like self-pitying douchebag. But with him and her, this give and take over the phone and stuff is just gnarly. Like it's so gnarly of her being all flirty and fun and putting on a face for our 2 best friends, and then going into the phone booth and like leaving a final message to her spouse, right? And she leaves a couple final messages. But man, oh man, it just invokes all of that to me. Like, yada yada. I'm reminded of like the Sweet Bird of Youth. They made us read that in high school, and it always stuck with me. That expression, and it's just she's watching it go away. She's sharing these stories with these kids, and it's in hopes that like that story will live on, like her motorcycle boyfriend with the chipped tooth. Like these stories feel so personal. It almost feels like documentary-esque in nature, where it almost feels like we're just going on a production road trip for something else, and we recorded the crew, like the cast and crew. And like the verisimilitude of that is like another thing I would clap up forever is, if you want to do super stilted stuff and do super meta stuff and all that fun, do your thing. But this is like the opposite of that. It's so grounded, and we'll get into the rest of it. But, these ideas of like fully realizing yourself and like what will you leave behind, it's like, will you ever truly get there? They kind of ebb and flow throughout the story, and you just, I feel so much for her. Like it's just this, it's a mixture of like pity and like, what are you doing? And then as you watch it each subsequent time, you go, no, I get it. It's like, maybe that's not what I would do, but this is your like last couple breaths, like live your truth kind of vibe. I don't know. But when we talk about like the documentary style of things, I think it's very important to discuss, just coining my own phrases, but the Coran Lubezki float, right? I'm a very big Quran fan just off of this, Roma and Children of Men. I need to peep his other stuff, but I just watched those movies like over and over and over again. And I'm just consistently, Lubezki didn't do Roma, whatever. But I'm just like blown away with the way that the camera moves. It feels documentary in the way that we're like avoiding things. It feels that way in the way that we're hiding behind walls. The camera kind of floats away. There's like little to no like static shots like that I can remember. I mean, maybe the wides, right? But it feels like they're just in the car and there's a ghost with a camera. And that's like outstanding to me. That just adds like such a sharp edge to this. The greens, this like the cinematography in this is, I mean, it's just to die for. Like to me, it's like the perfect amount of like a little bit of swag on it. Like a little bit of swag. Like you can tell that this isn't exactly how it came out to camera raw. They like nuked up the greens or something. Like, to me, it's like Florida vision. And we'll talk about how I feel about Florida with this, with Mr. Coran feeling about Mexico in a little bit. But it's like, it seems like they just kind of like yellow tinted it a little bit. Like, not Mexico in like Breaking Bad type sepia, but it's like the greens are so fucking loud and pronounced. And the landscapes look outstanding. And the car looks great. And it just feels... I assume they actually did this for the production, but it's like they actually just drove through the countryside with like 4 dudes, like Karan, Lubeski, and a couple like camera operator homies, and then the 3 leads. Like, I love like how contained that feels, even in like the road trip sense. Like, and we'll talk about the vehicle and the road trip in a minute, but it's like the camera lingers, it like floats behind walls. I'm reminded of the scene where Luisa is giving another call to Yano, or I think that's his name, and you know, she's leaving him the final message, and she's like, don't like take your clothes to that like dry cleaner anymore, they ruin your stuff, and like don't lose your key. Like, she's still like housekeeping and like tending to stuff, like tending to her like earthly responsibilities in the face of like the ultimate like goodbye, like the big black, like the big death. Like, you know, it's crazy to me. And when we do that, the camera floats behind that partition in their house, and we just see all the framed pictures of them together. It's just like an entire life like right in front of you, and it's so gnarly. Like, it tears me up. And it's and like every one of her phone calls does that. Like, you just get these moments with the kids where it's really funny, and then just the ultimate like heavy like punch in the head with her trying to like communicate to him without telling him everything that's going on. And the camera really like helps deliver that home of like, it feels like those Instagram videos that people kind of like replicate, where it's like they're not supposed to be recording on their phone, and they're like holding it up and like leaning out, and it's kind of sideways, like held at an angle. Like, it's got some shake to it, and it's like, we're not supposed to be there. Like, we're not supposed to be privy to these situations. And that's like a big part, is like what we're shown, what we're not shown, and like the way that they handle truth in this movie. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But another thing is just the mirrors and windows and like all these like vistas we kind of look through. So I mean, I'm reminded of, you know, her knocked out window at the motel when they first catch her crying, and we're looking at her through like the broken glass. Like, you could take what you want to out of each of these shots. Like, I'm not going to be like the film nerd guy on Instagram and be like, this is representing her broken psyche. But with all the mirror shots, like, these things are like perfectly composed. Like, I'm going to say, like, when they're playing foosball and she's crying in the phone booth, and in the second phone booth with the light off, we see them playing foosball and just being like dipshit 18-year-olds. Like, 2 bros like trying to arm wrestle each other over foosball while she's having like the hardest phone call of her life, and we're right there next to each other. They're small, they're zoomed out. Like, it like lands these crazy punches just by putting the camera like where it needs to be. And then just to talk about another couple like set pieces that were beautiful, I thought, with the camera work, where the bullfighting arena marriage is like outstanding. Like, to me, these little places, and we'll talk about the sense of place in a little bit too, but like, that is outstanding to me. The camera work there, it's like they're not doing any crazy shots, they're not doing any weird camera movements, they're not doing anything flex, but it's the idea that it just kind of reinforces like the entire vibe of the movie to me. The big thing that I noticed, and we do this in Roma, I'm reminded of like, me and my girlfriend just watched Adolescence, and they kind of do the same thing, where the camera kind of lingers and we kind of move around and we're exploring these spaces, like I said, with floating behind walls. But I'm thinking about when they were in that little restaurant, when they pulled up to that first little town outside the town, and homegirl comes and takes their order, and then the camera goes, and we latch onto her shoulder, and we follow her back into the kitchen, and we hear the rest of their conversation, and we're just watching these ladies like clean the dishes from a day's work. And there's just like sense of enormity. Like, it's like enormous. Like, behind each wall is a person, and you get like these little windows into their life. And obviously we're getting like more than a window into our 3 leads, but Coran just does this strange thing, and it's so beautiful to me, where we just like get to know all these other little side characters along the way, even just for flashes like of a moment. Like, the old lady whose granddaughter died of a heat stroke, whose name was Luisa, and she gives Luisa the little bear with her name on it from the stand. Like, makes me want to like throw up. It feels so big and real and like not in your face about it. Just like, it's like voyeuristic, but not in a gross way of just like, here's a camera, this is what they do. And you are just kind of sitting there and going, ah, ah. But it works like super duper well. And that's something that they did, Quran did in Roma really well. And that's something that they do really well in Children of Men with like these longer takes. And I love that. Like in an age where we're getting faster and faster shots, we're getting more and more movies where the editing is like frenetic and just like breakneck pace because it's made for Instagram attention spans. Anyone that has the like sensibility to like let a camera sit, let a moment breathe, and like make you sit there in whatever emotion that they're building for you, whether that be like uncomfortability, I don't know if that's a word, but you know what I'm saying, like whatever it might be, they let you sit in it, they let you stew in it, and it kind of washes over you in this way. And I think that's super powerful. Another part of the movie that just really, like part of the structure that is super duper important is the vehicle, the car itself, the idea of the road trip, right? We have, I mean, the word vehicle can be used in both of these instances, that's obviously where it came from, but it's a fun little double play here. The quote I wrote down from the movie is, Julio and Tenoch had no idea where they were and no idea how to get where they'd never been. That just hits the nail on the head for me. Like that's the whole powerful like piece of this, is it's just this car is going down these dusty ass roads they've never been. They don't really know where they're going. They have a map. Like part of what drives this home so powerfully is like the sense of time as well, where there's like no cell phones, there's no GPS. They ask their fried ass homie for directions on a map and they're flipping it upside down. They don't know where they're going. We're just following these winding roads. We don't know. And to me, obviously that's kind of just like a parallel for like living your life. Like, you know, you don't know where you're going. You don't know how to go where you've never been. Like your next step is always new. You don't know where you've never been. These things, it's like a super powerful idea to me of just like using the car as like the adventure through life. It's like the avatar for exploring all these pathways we don't understand, all these places we might never go, the turns we don't take. It's like the road trip, but kind of reflexive in that way of like, I think the road trip explores that always. But we don't, he just takes all these expectations I have, not having seen that many road trip movies, and he doesn't quite do it. Like we have the skeleton of the road trip and the meat on the bones is like a little different. Like I'm so used to, we just watched Apocalypse Now for my movie club and it was really, really awesome. And I loved the way that they kind of road trip on the river, that, where the idea is kind of, we're in this vehicle, it's the don't get out of the boat thing, but really all the stops are where things are progressing. We stop here and we learn this. We stop here and we learn this. And we're going up the river towards hell. These guys are going down the road towards heaven's mouth, apparently. But the stops, things happen at the stops, but that's not where the bulk of this is. Like the bulk of this is these strange wides where the car is just kind of cutting through the Mexican countryside and we're just getting glimpses into the conversation. We see the car passing a tractor. We see the car turning down a dirt road. We see the car going down these like old like city squares. And we're just listening to these like three characters talk, and there's something like super beautiful in just the natural conversation that like flows between them. Obviously it's written, but it's the vehicle is kind of what gets us there, obviously. But it's like in the car, we have all these revelations. In the car, the narrator kind of cues us into something that's going on outside the car. Camera pans. We see a worker that got hit trying to take a shortcut by a bus. They don't tell you like how to feel about it, but they're pointing out these things that like are going to elucidate something. Like for me, I don't know the history of Mexico like that. I've looked into it after watching this in Roma, and like tried to learn like what I could, but this is going to mean something completely different to someone from Mexico. This is going to mean something completely different to someone who lives in California. This is going to mean, you go down the list. It's just, they give you the swag and then you get to make what you want of it. And so much of the swag is the car. It breaking down and them getting towed by the tractor that they passed earlier in the movie. Like stuff like that's outstanding to me because we do so much without the words. Like, the words are almost filler, but they're not. We learn about the people through the words, and the story is moved by the car and the camera cuts. You know, it's outstanding. And then obviously the wides are just beautiful. Like, who wouldn't want to go there? Oaxaca, wow. Mexico, wow. Another thing is like, and I wasn't sure what to make of these, but I think it's more just a memorial to the change and the people that are getting passed by in this car. You know, we're in the car with these people. We stop at these places. We talk to the old guy with the hat. We talk to the old lady whose granddaughter died. We see these people, and we get a moment with them, and then we leave them. And I think there's something like very important in that. We leave them, and then the car keeps passing by these roadside memorials, like so many little crosses on the side of the road. Sometimes the narrator clues us in to what happened there. Sometimes it's like a motorcycle accident with a bunch of chickens, or a motorcycle accident separate from the chickens, but a chicken truck flips and there's an old lady crying. Like, we just get these crazy little word pictures that still work even in a different language, like even when translated. And I'm sure they're even more powerful in Spanish. And I was trying to kind of hear in, I speak Spanish at like a 4th grade level, and I was trying to kind of get some of the words in the way that they were describing it. And I noticed a couple of differences. I can't quite glean it. I'll watch it in 10 years and really get it. But it's so cool, these places we pass through and these roadside memorials. Obviously, there's like some lamenting going on. It's almost like a funeral procession in a way for Mexico, for like these things that we're leaving behind. And it's kind of what our characters are doing. And like, that's super beautiful to me. Like, the 3 levels of the story or what have you, and they're all mirrored together and moving along at the same pace. I mean, the other, the little like roadside extortion with the princess, with the queen. They pull up on this little town, and they're blocking the road, and they're like, "Yo, we're taking donations for our queen," and it's her quinceañera or what have you. I'm making shit up, but it's very clearly like you're not getting through unless you pay. It's like a toll, but it's like a toll by these poor people that live nearby. And so it's not quite a toll road. You're not getting anything out of it. It's for them. There's beggars in the restaurant. It's just this very strange, but I think very poignant kind of focus on the outside characters, like the fringe characters in who has been left behind in like the Mexican society and what have you. And like I said, not privy to Mexican history, but you feel it. And you see all these murals we're passing by, and you can feel like the powerful, like something swirling beneath the surface that I don't understand. And I'm sure there's someone else that could dig into it. But what's powerful is there's a lot of movies that rely on that. There's a lot of movies that lean on that entirely. And they like so much, like the crux of what they're doing is, do you understand the metaphor? The crux of what they're doing is like, did you read about the production of the movie? That makes it so much better. And to me, this movie like exists on its own, and then you learn about that, and it just kind of lights up a part of it or makes it even more beautiful. And the fact that I feel this way about it, and I could yap this much about it without knowing even that much of the history or the production, and just let it exist on its own is like, I think super powerful. Last thing I wrote for vehicle was just the road blocked by cattle, and then the tractor tow truck. So we went over the tractor tow truck, but to me the road blocked by cattle thing was very interesting, because once again, it's just like saying something. It's like a little metaphor or what have you. They're trying to get somewhere in this car, and there's a dude trying to steer these cattle somewhere, and they're kind of doing whatever they want. We don't hang on it that long. It's not like a huge impasse, but them putting it in there at all, these little stops, these little breaks, they all mean something. Like there's a stop for a reason. Why can't the car keep going? Why does the tire blow out? And the editing on those is super fun. Like the timing when the tire blows out when, I forgot what they reveal, but there's a big punch. He turns around from front seat, tire blows. And then the guy in the tractor is just like super nice, gives him his hat, and they tow the car along and give him a new tire. They don't show us all that. Like, we don't need to know all that. But you see it happen in real time, and it's super beautiful. It feels like a road trip, obviously. So, And then, one of the bigger things is manifestos y mythologies. So I put these together because, like a little alliteration, but there's some fairy tale allure to this, and that's kind of what I talked about a little bit in my Begonia video, but I love this like fairy tale thing, like these fantastical places, like these Big Rock Candy Mountains, these Treasure of the Sierra Madre type stories where it's more of an ideal. Like we're pursuing something that doesn't exist, but boy, we sure wish it was, and maybe it's about the people we meet along the way. But there's something very fairy tale about that, of like the man on a quest, and where is he going? These three on a quest, and where are they going? To me, I love the way this plays out with the Cielo de Boca de Cielo, or however you say it, Heaven's Mouth, right? I love that they make it up, and those two are like on time together, and we don't know that it exists. We can tell immediately that they made it up. We can tell immediately that they're kind of just riffing, and they're gonna just find a beach and see if they'll go. They're fishing, right? And what's fun is in that first scene where they're fishing, the cousin comes back by and he's like, "You little shit," because he can see that they're caking on her, and they go, "Oh man," and she like reveals that she has a husband, and both their faces are like priceless, like they're like mad about it. They're like, "There goes my chance at that." And then like the allure of it is kind of just like we're kind of getting, like a trail of crumbs along. Like we're thinking like, is there going to be this beach, right? And then obviously if you've seen it ever, we find the beach beautiful, but the fulfillment of this like mythology is like so good to me, because we get lost in the night, the vehicle breaks down. Where are we going to go? Our big way of getting around in this story. Yeah. Our four wheels, our big way of getting around in this story breaks down right in the beach. We get stuck, we cut in a little sand trap, right? The wheels won't go. Night falls. It's just a beautiful choice in story structure. But then she wakes up in the morning and we're at this beach. Now, I think the Heaven's Mouth is the next beach they go to with the boat guy. But it's a beautiful, like, it's breathtaking. And she goes down to the water, and I'm reminded of the scene in Roma where Cleo kind of goes in to save the kids, and it's this sort of like baptism thing going on. Like there's some sense of like washing it clean. Like there's some sense of rebirth in the water, even though we know it's a limited time thing. It's going to wear off. It's like it's a place beyond like your wildest dreams. It's not real. Like we can't be sure that it's real until these other people show up, And then even when they show up, they're like the other passersby we see. Like they're kind of caught in the past, like they're getting left behind. This guy just boats around and sells fried fish with his family, and it's a beautiful little family, and they have such a like fun way of things. Like to me, once they hit the beach, it becomes, we have that fulfillment of the road trip like destiny thing. It's like we found the cool spot, like we're gonna party, and then we do party, but it's overshadowed by death, right? Like it's overshadowed by this nasty truth that we have hanging in the background. We're playing soccer, and it's so fun. And like he's playing keeper, he's like, "Come on, shoot! What, you don't like Campos?" Like it's so fun. We're cooking food, we're drinking beers, we're tanning, we're playing in the water, we're getting to know this beautiful family that came and helped us out. And the whole time, like there is this inkling that like something bad is happening or this will end, But getting there is like the big thing. Like getting there is the biggest thing, and we got there. And what's fun is in getting there, we think that like there is a vehicle, there's a physical vehicle. Another vehicle is we think that these manifestos that they talk about are very important. They have their 11 points, and I forget some of them, but they're really funny. It bears repeating, they say. And we, throughout the runtime here, they throw out like 5 or 6 of them. It's very clearly just like a shtick, like a little talking point for them. They, get thrown out the window of the car, gone, just like all the people they pass by. And, obviously we get the whole thing of them cheating on them banging each other's girlfriends. We get this whole thing of like, it's really funny because then she creates a manifesto, new rules for them to follow. Like it's kind of about within the car, within this little microcosm of things, within this little environment, like who is making the rules and then who calls them. When they make the rules, it's kind of flippant and that's very boyish. and they're kind of learning new things as we go. When she makes the rules, it's to put her foot down, and she's had it with them like fighting, because part of what's fun is them fighting, not really over the manifesto. It's for their personal, desires, but dealing with that is very fun, and I think there's definitely more to be said about the manifesto that I'm not picking up on here, but it's very important because they reference it multiple times later, like in the script, and it's very cool to see the numbers, and then just have that fun little conversation, and her be kind of teasing them about how silly that is, and about how do they really follow it, and just get their little, get little glimpses into their life from the little pieces that they decide to share with her. But really, the fairy tale mythology of it, and like the fulfillment of the myth and the breaking of the manifesto, is, I think, like a really, really important and like fun balance for the squad. I think it adds something super powerful and super like human to this thing. Like we make up these stories to kind of give us something to strive for. These kids made up this story to get this hot older lady that they like to go on them with a trip, to go with them on a trip, and they end up finding it, and then they don't know what to do with themselves. And I mean, we'll talk about the interplay there later, but so much of it is just that. It's just the striving for this thing, and then how does the story structure work with when they find the beach? And I think it's beautiful at the sunrise that Miss Louisa goes out there and finds the beach, and then they pull up and they're just as amazed as she is on the boat when the guy's carting them to the other beach, and they're like, "What's it called?" And like Boca de Cielo, and we cut close up on Gail. I that made me smile like so big. It makes me smile like ear to ear every time I see the movie, because it's this like childlike wonder of like, I didn't think it was there, but it's there. Like I made up this dream, this ideal, and here we are, and I don't know what to do with myself. This is one of the bigger pieces of the whole puzzle, I would say. And it's something the narrator says when we are in that little town where they first start to get to know each other, grab some beers, and we follow the lady into the kitchen. He says something about a partial truth, right? And the partial truth and what we hide and what's true and what we kind of fib about and where the pretty little lies come in is so much of the dance of this to me. Soju down. The idea for me is Louisa is like the middle of this. And as you see it the second time, the third time, she's doomed to die. As we all are, but with her, it's quite a bit earlier with the cancer. And so much of this is just her holding all this pain. And for her, the truth is something that she's shielding others from. And it fucks me up, but it's, when she's on the phone with, what's his name? I keep forgetting. Yano. And then she's telling him, no, you were cheating on me, so I had to leave. It's fine. Don't blame yourself. Like, she's extending this kindness to him that's taking from her. Like, she is giving, like, throughout this whole thing, right? Like, there is a generosity to this that's beyond me. Like, there's a grace to this that's beyond me, because she's holding all this pain. We see her crying in the hotel room. She doesn't tell Julio and Tinoch. She's like, oh no, like, it must be the heat, and there's this funny thing that we keep returning to. It must be the heat, which obviously not when we know that. And the kids start cluing in on it too. They're like, oh, she must have been getting cheated on. And the first time I watched it, I was like, genius. These kids are smarter than me, and they figured it out. There's another truth. There's so many layers to this, and it kind of depends on how far you want to dive, and they only tell you if half of it's right. There's a partial truth to Yana, She's telling him all the stuff he needs to keep up with. She's telling him she loves him, and it's this awful, painstaking goodbye. Like, it's a final goodbye, and she's trying to do it with this tact and dignity that requires, like, all of her being. It's the scene when they're playing foosball, and then she has to, like, collect herself and put the phone on her chest. She's not listening to him, really, but he's probably saying some bullshit like he did on the phone at the beginning. We're not privy to what he says in those phone calls, which I think is very powerful. At the beginning, we hear him go, oh, I'm the worst, I'm such an asshole. He cheats on her. After that, it's more about how she's going to handle the situation. And to me, she handles it, like, mad admirably. I mean, I don't think I would do that. I don't know that many people that would. There's a crazy strength to it of sitting there on the phone with him, composing yourself, maintain that composure, pick the phone back up and go, no, it's okay, but I gotta go, right? Like, even in the messages she leaves him, she maintains. Like, when she's around the boys, she maintains. Like, there is this idea that when she's not, like, throwing herself at them or being funny, flirty, cutie, like, taking care of these kids, like, when she's not distracting herself with stuff, like, the inevitability of the cancer is like front and center, and it's awful. It's a big, awful beast. And then, you know, the other part of the truth thing to me is the truth between our boys, Julio and Tenoch. What's really fun is we don't ever get to know what's going on there. Obviously, they don't seem to take fidelity, faithfulness very, very serious. You know, they don't seem to care when they cheat on their girlfriends. They seem to be a little caught up in the fact of their girlfriends cheating on them, but as soon as they're gone to Europe, which is like a funny little turn for me, but they're like, yo, I banged your girlfriend. Yo, I banged your girlfriend. And they only reveal these things in times when, like, their feelings are hurt. You know, that's another fun moment with the narrator where he's like, he had only been hurt like this when yada yada. And then Julio says, yeah, I banged your girlfriend. And then he says it when she's going to bang Julio in the back seat while he's driving, Tenoch. So these are truths that are exposed as like weapons. You know what I mean? If I was gonna be a real literary guy about it, a little nerd about it, they're extending these partial truths, and then we keep getting more and more revealed. You know, we're at the dinner on the beach, which we'll talk about later. It's like one of my favorite scenes of all time. But it's like we get them saying, "Oh no, it happened multiple times." And they're super caught up on, like, did she blow you? And that's, like, the big catch, you know? It's not so much the banging. How many times did you bang? And then there's this, like, stringing along with each other of, like, what is true. And we're just kind of do this. There's, like, it's like a jousting kind of thing. It's kind of puffing each other's chests up and, like, only revealing the sexual escapades when it kind of, like, moves what you need forward, when it kind of hurts the other guy. And there's something super juvenile and childish, but it rings really true about that. And then, you know, I'm a sucker for when they say the movie title in the movie and it goes well. And for me, this one lands really well because we get that little beat when they're at the dinner at the beach and he goes, yeah, and your mom too. And they look at each other and they're not sure about sizing it up. And then he laughs and you go, well, like, what? Like, he's probably lying. But the fact that he would even bring that up right now when we're having this, like, heart to heart is insane. And so you don't know, and we don't get to know. And something about that is super beautiful to me too, of we leave the truth, like, somewhere in the middle. Like, we leave the truth somewhere between Quran and us. We get to kind of make our own truth. I'm sure he'd be a little hands off about it because he's a smart guy. But who does have the truth is the narrator. And, like, that's the biggest kick to me, is that the narrator has, obviously, like, you know, third person omniscient narrator, which is really fun for, like, this exposition. We get to know little things, little glimpses into the characters that aren't super important, but they kind of light up certain things. Like, I'm reminded of, I mean, there's a million examples, but I really love how the audio stops and then we kick into something else. And he just says these weird, brooding things. And you kind of sit there and go, huh. Some of them are a lot easier to digest, right? So when you watch a second time, Louisa taking the questionnaire, that's very easy to read of, like, oh, damn. Like, she's wilding out and, like, needs to be seen, needs to be known. She feels like she's leaving something on the table, and we're about to deal with that, right? But one of the things I'm reminded of is when the narrator's like, there's things they didn't need to know about each other, like Tenoch, like, lifting the toilet seat with his foot at Julio's house. And then we're in the hotel after that, and he lifts the toilet seat with his foot, and he's like, there's piss everywhere. And it's just these beautiful little moments that are just like these minute attentions to detail that really, really drive something home for me. Everything's kind of important down the road. The narrator has some real punchy stuff to say, and he really closes out bits of the story, like, super, super well. We get all this idea of change, what will you leave behind, all the stuff with the vehicle, it's really driven home with the narrator, right? So we learn about the guy who got hit by the bus. I already talked about him. We learned that the boat guy is going to have to go be a janitor because a union. We learned that the beach is going to get touristified and they're going to build a hotel there. We learned that the pigs that destroy their camp are all going to get slaughtered and they're going to cause a bacterial outbreak at a music festival. What else do we learn? We learn about Louisa. Like, we learn all these horrible things about her past and all the stuff she's had to deal with. And then it really, like, adds another level with the dialogue later. We learn that she had to take care of her aunt. And then when they ask what she has in common with Yano, she's like, yeah, we're both, like, orphans. And I had to take care of my aunt, and he was there for me. And it's just, I shouldn't smile. It's awful. Like, poor girl. And she's so strong. But, like, what a douchebag, man. What a douchebag. And the narrator really, like, clued us in on that. And he clues you in on things that you go, maybe I don't need to be clued in on that. And then you think about it more. And on, like, the third or fourth watch, you go, yeah, I see. Like, it's painting a whole picture. The car is kind of carving through these roads, and we get just around the road. And the narrator is, like, filling out these little portions that we don't stop at, that we get to see, you know? It's nuts. I love the narration in this. When narration's done good, it's like one of the most powerful tools that you can have. We kind of treat the movie more like a book where we can make you aware of certain things. We can kind of figure certain things out. And we can do some more with the dramatic irony of like, what do you know? What don't you know? What am I going to tell you? And then with the narrator here, there's no fibbing. Like, he doesn't play with you at all, but you don't know exactly when these things that he says are going to come back around. And they really do. Like, the biggest one I'm thinking of is when they both hurt each other's feelings. When Julio walks in on Tino getting blown by a homegirl, and then he runs off, and the narrator's like, he hadn't felt like this since he saw his mom in his, like, godfather's arms. And it's like, the way that they describe that is it's in these terms that aren't so precise, but you can, like, feel the feeling. Like, we're in the ballpark of it. And then after that, he says, I banged your girlfriend. So, like, the narrator revealing these truths to us lets us get a glimpse into the character dynamic, and then they reveal what they'd like, and we don't know about them. He'll tell us some stuff, and we can probably trust the narrator. He seems to be pretty reliable. But then when Tinout comes down, and Julio says, I banged your girlfriend, he hadn't been hurt like that since his father popped up in the newspaper about being dishonest. And then later, at the beach scene, her dad's like, she's like, your dad's an honest politician, right? And they both, like, share a laugh over it. Like, it's just beautiful writing where everything that gets mentioned pretty much has a tie-in somewhere thematically or has a tie-in somewhere narratively, where you could draw a line on a timeline somewhere and go, that's that. This is there for that. This provides this. We don't waste any time. It's lean, mean, and sexy. And the narrator just adds, like, a super beautiful tint to it to me. Wow. What else could you say? The idea of truth in this is a big deal, and it's also something that they talk about with their manifesto, which I didn't realize till this time I watched it, when they say, like, hey, man, you try to get close to the truth, but, like, fuck, who the fuck knows if you can ever get there. And that's something, yeah, that's a line that drives straight through the damn thing, where we're just going to have to, like, learn what we learn and then run with that. We're going to have to learn what we learn about these people, and we're going to have to run with it. We're going to have to see what they do, run with that, make judgments on their character based off that, make, narrative decisions based off that. It's a little bit meta in a loose way, if you'd like to apply it that way. And I think that's beautiful. Well done, Quran. One of my favorites. And now I think one of the other biggest things is the setting, location, a true sense of place, right? I love when they're at the beach. We'll talk about that more in a minute, but he says magical musical Mexico. Yeah, feels like that. It does. Once they get to the beach, feels like larger than life. There's not, like, the light kind of dips off around them, and we're in this beautiful little bubble, like this beautiful warm little bubble on the beach. Breathtaking wides, like I said earlier, of just going through this landscape. And like we said earlier, you know, when they drive through these towns and they drive through these little countrysides, you get this idea that there's so much more like life teeming behind these walls. Like there's another old lady who has another traumatic story, who remembers everything from when she was 5, you know, and she's 98 now. What stories is she going to take with her? Like all of these things I'm bringing up, like they ring true through like every line of dialogue, through every character, through every moment of this. Like it's insane. And then, you know, with these wides, like I just talked about it, but the warm bubble of this beach nighttime hut drinking is like probably my favorite scene ever. It's so cool. Like I love when I'm super locked in on a conversation. I love when a conversation just fully captures me, and it's not so much nerves or like a thriller kind of aspect of like, what are we going to reveal? It's just, I care about all 3 of these people, and I'd love to know what they're going to talk about. And I'd love to know how the last encounter that they had kind of colors what they're about to say. Right. And when they're at the beach there's this sense of finality, right? We've gone on the beach. We've met everybody there is to meet, where we've kind of buried the hatchet, like about banging each other's girlfriends. And we have these fun little moments of who's telling the truth, TU MAMA TAMBIEN, fam. With the true sense of place, there's like this true sense of character, this true sense of dynamic between them. I'm really reminded of, you know, when we have that scene after Tenno gets to kind of make love to Homegirl for the first time. And he tries to walk into her room with her. And he's kind of like awkwardly lingering outside the door. He's not going to push it. But he's like, I might get lucky again. And then she just goes, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, Tanuk. Like, what are you doing? And then he like weird and kind of wanders off. Like to me, shit like that like was making me laugh so hard because it was so perfect of like, this kid has no idea what's going on. And he's just hoping again. And she had a sense of clarity after that and was like, not right now. But there's something just, you know, so human about all this. And that's another word I keep coming back to, is just how human the whole thing is. But Mexico, you look so beautiful in this, you know? And like I said earlier, I don't know the history of Mexico, so there's things I lose. Like when they pass through the part of Mexico where his caretaker, Leo, is from. And I don't know what these areas kind of represent, and I don't know what they will be, but it feels powerful. And then when you pass through like the smaller towns and cities and you see that they're kind of, it's like empty husks of buildings after we were in like these like Tenno's like beautiful house and at the bullfighting ring. You know, that's another sense of place that I think is like larger than life, is the kind of romance of the bullfighting ring. It's the first like kind of courtship that we get. And obviously things turn a little different than the typical romance courtship. Especially because we kind of have like a weird love triangle. You know, the bullfighting ring is like super outstanding to me. I love the yellows there, and I love the, you know, that's something very particular. Obviously we don't really have the bullfighting rings anywhere besides like Mexico and Spain. I'm sure there's some other instances of it, but seeing stuff like that is it immediately places me where I need to be. Obviously, you know, I'm a gringo watching this, so it's fine either which way. But for me, that was like just a super cool decision to host that there. And just another check mark in a long list of things, you know. And then when we talk about the characters and these dynamics, I think a big thing, a big idea, and a big swing of things is that's to abandon the pretense and the dance. And that's just sort of a euphemism for sex. But there is a dance to it. You know, think about male birds like courting the female bird. I was kind of thinking about that when I was watching this, and funnily enough. But it treats sex with such a dignity. It's like, it's not pornographic. My girlfriend and I just watched Beef, and I was like kind of grossed out by the sex in that because it feels pornographic. It feels like it's supposed to be something besides like a moment between two people. I'm not sure how to say that. It becomes this thing that's like bigger than words, larger than words, and kind of exists outside of like language. I'm not sure how to say it, but it's like there's something embarrassing and endearing in all of the sex in this, where it's like you think like it almost gets this like, oh look, he's getting lucky tonight, like, oh, lucky him with the older lady, and then it's super embarrassing. Like that's another thing with the acting from Luisa, but it's like it's like a 8-second ordeal, and then they start saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry," and then she like covers her face and she's like, "Oh God, it's good, dude, it's good," and like there's a grace to that. She's allowing them, like she's saving them the embarrassment, but us as the viewer, there is an embarrassment there, and then. But you know, at the end of it, even after that, the dynamic isn't like blown. It's like the people talk like people. The dynamics make sense. There's a little bit of jealousy. She's flirting and teasing and kind of having fun with it on her way out, you know. And we get this idea that like no one's really. It's hard with this thing with the road trip or with the coming of age American movie where it's like the older lady teaches the kids, you know, because you look back on it with these glasses now and you look at these 80s movies and you're like, that might be bad. Like that lady might be a predator. And when you watch this, the first time you go, that's not great. And then the second time you watch it and you go, it's just ugly in a way that's so real for everybody. Like there's no victims here. The kids are puffing out their chests and they're jousting like we talked about earlier. They're trying to, you know, court her in this way. And they have no idea that the reason they're getting lucky is not because they're puffing out their chests correctly. She is doing this like for herself and like she's almost trying to like impart them with some wisdom before she goes. And I think that's maybe like the beautiful way that sex is portrayed in this as like a vehicle, a vessel for... It's the dance of life. It's like, it's a give and take, waves, what have you, like all this beautiful symbolism that kind of comes about in the story. There's something super important there of like, she's kind of teaching them and abandoning their lame little like manifesto, like boyish manifesto of like beating off and like banging girls and stuff. She's like, yo, a woman is like a partner and she's not like a passive participant. Like that's a very important thing with the dance here is there's two people involved in the dance. And that kind of goes against the male bird dancing thing earlier I said, which is like, she's not just watching, like she's inviting, and there's, you know, it's a little rough with like the age gap and stuff. And there's something weird about it, but there's something very like vulnerable human with it too, with the embarrassment that comes along with it, with both parties, with her being like, what am I doing? Because she has these constant realizations of like, I probably shouldn't be doing this, but she is at the end of it, I think, trying to teach them of like, hey guys, like, you're cheating on your girlfriend with me. I'm being kind of selfish with this, but like, take girls serious. Stop cheating on your girlfriends. You know, this is something that you grow with someone through. Like, this isn't like a disposable act in like a way. That's how I read it. It's like, who's teaching who, you know? She's teaching them about like the kind of dance around it and like everything. Like it's really funny when she asks him to like eat her out and then he just like totally fucks it up and you can tell she's just laughing and she's just like, he doesn't get it. So we'll move on to the next thing. But it's like, who's teaching who, you know? They're teaching her, they're reminding her of like this sweet bird of youth, like this fleeting, like, let's have fun, let's go do it. And that's the beautiful thing of like watching this unfold with her having this huge shadow cast over her and them just being dumbasses together like the whole time. And then obviously, right, the reflexive nature of the sex there is cool, but the literal thing with the dance is I love a good dance number. I love a good dance number in a movie. It's one of my favorite things that people can do in movies. And the dance number in this is so good. I love her walking up to the jukebox, camera follows, we get a little closer in. She turns around, she's looking right into your soul. And I'm like, whoa, she's looking at me. And it's just so good. Like, I don't know, it just puts you right in there. And like a good dance number just builds a scene, helps you have a little bit of fun. You shake off get a little loosey-goosey. It's an automatic +1 for me, really. Like a good dance number is outstanding. When it doesn't, like when it just feels natural, like characters just dancing, it almost seems like the actors are having fun. Like I really love that. And I mean, the big thing that you can't, I don't think, escape, that I don't see enough people talk about is there's like very strange, like, and not strange in a bad way, but like sexual undertones with like bisexuality or like being gay, right? I had seen some stuff about people talking about like there's 3 movies here. There's a road trip, there's a story of Mexico modernizing, and there's a third very serious story. The first time I watched it, didn't know she had cancer till the end. So I was like, I think overly reading, but you get the vibe at least I do, that Julio like has a crush on Tenok. And there's a lot of like weird moments that kind of vindicate that, of her being like, you guys should just go bang each other, that's what you want to do anyways. Obviously them smooching at the end is very strange, and then like jumping out of bed in the morning with each other, and they're like, whoa, 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 and they don't talk, and then at the end like that ruins their friendship and they both move on. Obviously it's not so like clean cut, but there are some like strange give and pull there of she's in between them, but that's what I was speaking about earlier of like this love square. It's not, I guess it's still a triangle because there'd be 2 points between them. That was a dumbass thing to say, but it's like there is something there. Like there is a sort of inkling there of like there's something more than meets the eye. It's not just this like older woman teaching them sex road trip movie. Obviously there's death, decay, life, what all that brings, but you know, you obviously them beating off together into the pool, them naked showering together, and I don't know if that's just like a cultural difference, so that's not something I can weigh in on, obviously, but as an outsider looking in on that, I see that and I say there is like something else there that's a little heavier, and it's gotta be something with that. Like it really does have to be. It came a little too naturally to them, I think. And that's not in a bad way. It's just interesting because it's sort of colored by them talking about like their gay friend too. I think his name's David. I can't remember. But like they talk about him queening out and about how his dad kicked him out. And there's something about like this revealing of your true self, like the partial truth we talked about earlier of like, if you're bisexual, if you're Julio, the partial truth is leaning in and loving this girl or liking this girl or being infatuated with this girl that your friend is too. You guys can bond over that, but you're secretly like looking over to the side, and I kind of get that vibe. My friend Josh was talking to me about this movie and reviewed it, and I didn't realize this till the 5th watch, boohoo me. But, in the beach scene before they kind of all bang together, it totally seems like Julio is fake shooting, like the drinks. Like, Tenok keeps pouring, they give homegirl the last shot, and then they're messing with each other. He's clearly drunk, but he's going like this, and he puts it back down, and you can still see the booze in his cup. And that's not something, I haven't seen anybody talk about that. And I feel like these little things, these little like breadcrumbs are like something. What are you revealing about yourself? Is sex like a performance? Is sex like an act of love between two people? Is sex something that you can like show your true self with, like, are you going to just give the partial truth? I don't know. And that kind of tie between like sex and truth, life and death is super important. We're back. I forgot to talk about a couple things. I got too carried away. My love of this movie. It was also super late last night. So, the big long-winded thing I came up with that I liked is it's just like I imagined before it all turned different. This is sort of just about like memory and kind of how memory identifies with the place. Obviously so much of this is about Mexico. It's kind of like a love letter to Mexico from a Mexican man. I believe Mr. Cuarón is from Mexico City proper. So where we start is kind of close to home for him. And then the journey outwards is sort of a journey through all the surrounding areas and the rest of things for him. I get this idea that he feels the same way about Mexico that I feel about Florida. And it's like the erosion of a homeland almost. It sounds kind of silly. And the idea isn't so... It's still pervasive in the States, but it's not so like tied to a people millennia old and things of that nature. The ethnogenesis, yada yada, of the American culture makes it a little more of a fresher thing. That's not to say that there's not still some fight going on with it. But there's like this wistfulness. It's kind of like the loss of swag, the changing of things, and like lamenting the death of the old that is brought in with the new. I wrote growing pains. That's even a little like euphemistic in and of itself, where it doesn't sound so bad. I think part of what he's positing is just that it does feel bad. There is like this sweet bird of youth, like it's fleeting, it's going away, it will not come back. And I think part of what really drives home with this is like the technology too. Really, this movie would fail to work with the presence of cell phones. It would fail to work with the presence of Airbnbs at the beach or wherever they were going. It would fail to work in the modern day. It's almost this thing of like, this was the last time you could be on the map somewhere on the earth and make a movie in this manner, like the early 2000s, late 90s. And I mean, I have a wistfulness for this time too, because like that's when I was like 4, like early 2000s. I'm like a little kid, and there's little bits of my life that are like pre-internet, or like when the internet was still kind of like the Wild West. And obviously, there's not too much internet in this movie at all, but the idea that the physical phones have to be used to make the calls. There's no GPS with the phone. We're kind of just on this adventure, and there's nothing really tying us to. As soon as we leave the city proper, we're out of it, right? There's not like this little vestige of things. There's not something that you can always cling to that will, return you to like, society, the city, what have you. The lack of cell phones, the lack of internet, and then obviously, there's no GPS in the car. It was just the last time before everything was everything. It was the last time before everything was something. It was the last time before everything was like hyper normalized and kind of down this like narrowing, like single file road. And I think part of that feeling is what's captured in this. Obviously, Quran wasn't like looking towards the future, but he was looking at the now and then looking at the past and going, damn, like look at where we've wound up. And then in a way, just as the years go by and by, you go back and you watch this and it feels further and further away. It feels more and more foreign that they could even find a beach like that where there's like a shack set up and there's not like, not a phone in sight, but you know what I mean? Like these are people who time has like passed by and we won't see it again. And I feel like that way driving through like parts of rural Florida where you see like all these old mobile homes next to McMansion neighborhoods where you can reach out of the window and touch your neighbor's house for the low 200s. You see it where they're chopping down all the trees. And there's, you can wag your fist at progress. And you're trying to catch a ghost. Good luck. But there is something there and like something very poignant about that. The magic of this and just kind of the magic in a bottle, the flash in a pan of this moment in time. Because there is, magical musical Mexico, we talked about it, but it's very of the time, like of this exact particular time. These kids, they're getting their Molly from San Francisco. They call it like Frisco, which I thought was really funny. And they know about all this stuff and they have like enough internet, and there's like this global culture that the kid likes Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and like Thundercats, but we haven't reached the cell phone. It's very like, it's just very 1999, 2000, 2001, which is just super cool. And it's like, it ends up being like a period piece as we look back on it. But the biggest thing besides the technology is just, I kind of describe this as like the last summer before you turned old kind of movie. And I think a lot of like coming of age things do this, obviously. It's like in the name. But it's so gnarly and like poignant here because we're kind of watching it like die on the vine. Kind of like the life and death thing that we'll talk about. It's kind of watching it like fleet away. Like the Sweet Bird of Youth, obviously I just said that. But it's, for me, it reminds me of the time in my life, like the last time where everything was just kind of like carefree. Like you could go on a road trip like this. And it was just kind of like pipe dream. This is crazy. Like, what are we going to do? We'll figure it out as we go. You hit a certain age. And for me, it was a little later, like 22, 23. And then things get serious. Like you get a job. You go, okay, I do have to go to school. Okay, I do have to like check in for the job regularly. Okay, I do have to like pay the bills. Okay, I do have a pet or a child or like a significant other and all this stuff. And they have girlfriends, but it's played in this like very you know, high school girlfriend kind of way where it's not too serious. There's not that many things tying them down, Julio and Tenoch, and Miss Luisa just kind of gets to that point. She has let all the things like tie her down, which there's nothing wrong with that, but the presence of and the looming, like the imminence of death, right, really kind of severs all those ties for her, and it's her last summer too. And it's them sharing this last summer before everything turns different. In a way, it's the death of childhood for them. For her, it's the death. It's just death. And so I think that's just a very poetic way to like look at these things of days past, time passing you by, progress, ugly progress. That last summer before you turned old, before everything turned different, and just about how like the picturesqueness, how picturesque perhaps I should say, the past ends up being, especially when we look at it through a nice grainy film. When things, before everything was plugged in, and it feels even more magical when you look back on it. And that's to add to like the mythology of the Heaven's Mouth, these crazy beaches that maybe don't exist. Obviously they do in real life, but we're hunting kind of ghosts. And this is hunting ghosts of the past that you can't find anymore. You'll never really get there again. And it's very super wistful to me, and it fills me with like this sadness, but you don't wish to go back there maybe, but you see it and it's a little inward smile, and you say, yeah, that was cool back in the day. That was fun. I'm glad it happens for them too. I'm glad they got to see Mexico like that. I'm glad somebody captured it, and like I said, I feel that way about Florida. When I make my debut film, or one of the first couple, this feel of the road trip to kind of dissect and drive through the heart of your home, be it a whole country, be it a state, be it a city, is a really good way to show off like a lot of land. We put a lot of distance on the car or the RV or whatever it's going to be on your feet. You get a lot like all these pastoral scenes, and we're wanderers, we're journeymen, and we're making our way through that. And I just think that's it's a beautiful vehicle. It's a beautiful vessel for this. And it's a beautiful way to look back and look forward at the same time. And in that, we kind of need to talk about. So, this was a big one that I somehow skipped on my notes. I think I jumped around sections. And I don't read movies so politically usually. For me, it's like a very emotional thing usually. There's just like an emotional resonance or there isn't. There's a swag or there isn't. With this one, we have both of those easily. It's like off the charts. But it's very hard to ignore some of like, they're not even overtones, but they just keep happening outside the car, and subtle mentions from the narrator. And then anytime you see somebody talking about this, a lot of people, a lot of Mexicans in particular, have a lot to say about how this is sort of representative of the changing Mexico. Obviously, we just talked about like Mexico kind of modernizing or what gets left in the cracks there and as things change, but there's a political change aspect to this as well, that I'm not going to pretend to know too much about, but I wanted to share my reading of it. I almost look at it where obviously the thing that's very in your face, just to give the information before I tell you my kind of take on it, is Mr. Tenoch is rich, super rich. His dad went to Harvard. He's trained in economics. He wants his kid to take economics. His dad's in the picture. His mom's rich. They have a nanny that take care of him full time. He thought it was his mom till he was 4. We get this picture painted for us by the narrator. Julio, dad's not in the picture since he was 5. His mom's like a secretary at a big company. It seems like they're comfortably middle class. Like they have a nice little like house or apartment or townhouse or whatever it is. We don't get to see the outside of it, but they're doing okay. They have a car. His sister is in the protests. His mom's there, and his dad's out of the picture. And then when there are feuds between the two, if it's not over girls, which a decent bit of the time it's over Luisa or their girlfriends, it's over, the insults come out in a way where it's very like class based. We get kind of a tug of war, right? He calls him yuppie, like fresa, I think is what it is. It's like literally translates to strawberry, but I've heard Chino Pacas and Squad say that in some of their songs, like making fun of people. It's like preppy kid, yuppie. So Julio calls Tenoch that, and he calls him like low class scum when they get into beef at one point. And then obviously, I talked about this earlier, but the narrator, speaking on how Tenoch lifts the toilet seat with his foot at Julio's house because he thinks he's dirty and gross a little bit. It's maybe not. It's more just ingrained in him than it is a conscious decision, I think. And we see him do that in the gross hotel where he says there's piss everywhere. And then we learn that Julio like lights a match or a candle or something in Tenoch's bathroom when he leaves to try and kind of like clear the air. There's like an idea that Julio is trying to step up to that level or would like to, and he might never get there. And Tenoch is sort of, I don't know the word I would use because he's not rude until he becomes rude, but I don't even think he's aware of like how his situation is impacting the dynamic between them, right? Until it comes out in these bloody little outbursts. They're not bloody. In these little outbursts, these little arguments that they have. So, I mean, when we get that out of the way, and we know Luisa is from Spain, right? And she looks at Mexico and she goes, oh, this is so crazy. This is so beautiful and stuff. So, I mean, I see a tie between body and country, which I've always really liked, like this theme and stuff. I see these three exploring a country that they'd like to get to know in their car. They're all kind of new to it for various reasons. Luis is from Spain. These two are from the city. I don't think it doesn't seem like they go out of their way to these beaches very often. They're exploring the country in the same way that they're kind of exploring their sexuality. They're exploring each other's bodies. But, Luis is exploring like what that last sense of freedom is. And in a lot of ways, I kind of read like Luisa as the current state of Mexico at this time, whatever it may be, right? I'm not going to pretend to know like the historical significance of it. I know that they had like a regime change. Maybe not a regime. I don't know if that's a bad word to use, but I know they had like a massive government overhaul around this time, and they were trying to like weed out a lot of the corruption. So what ends up happening is there are Spanish roots in Mexico, right? That's something that's sort of inextricable from the country, is the Spanish coming over and being fuckwads, and then kind of Nene and the Mayan people and the Olmec people and the Toltec people and the Aztec people, and you keep listing them. And so you're unable to mix. You're unable to unmix those, right? La mezcla, dude. And so I see her as like the current state of Mexico. She has these Spanish roots, and she's kind of seeking some kind of balance between the two. Like she's this intermediary almost. And they're trying to both like stake their claim in a way. And there's like this manliness, like this manhood thing, this machismo. I learned about like that in my Spanish classes, and it's this weird outsider perspective where we obviously have some of that in our culture, but it's not the exact same thing. And so I can learn about it with words and books. The best way to learn about it is meeting people that it's kind of impacted their lives, and then seeing stuff like this, where it feels like this media is so like plain about it that you maybe get a better idea of it. And so I see this tug of war where it's like the middle class and upper class are kind of tug of warring over the future of Mexico, right? And I think it says something sort of horrible and dark that she dies at the end of it. And there's no maybe like Mexico left to be had. And I think that's kind of what we're exploring when we drive past these dilapidated houses on the outside and these folks that have been left by the wayside, like these people in the Pueblo and like the super duper like low class like countryside people that just didn't keep up with the times. We kind of, while our main characters sort of ignore it, they're in the car and we're going past. Coran does the thing that he does best, and I talked about this earlier, where the camera hooks onto the shoulder of the waitress lady, and we follow her into the kitchen, and we just get to sit for a moment with these ladies as they clean the dishes from their day of making food. And they don't have much, they don't really say anything. And like, it's not so overt, but we're sitting there and we're getting to listen to the end of our three protagonist conversation while we just watch these ladies wash some dishes. And you're kind of just left there to soak it in. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. We don't get to ignore it in the same way that they get to ignore it. For them, it's in another room. For us, it's right in front of us. And I think the car does that really well too. Obviously, we're kind of rehashing a lot of things here, but this is the next day, so hopefully I'll rehash it better. But we're in the car, we're driving by, and they're kind of like, yo, hide the weed, but they're not really, the gravity of that is kind of lost on them, as so long as they're not going to get arrested for having the pot, or the cops are going to take their pot. Like, they just drive right past it, but the camera goes back, and we just have to look at some dude getting, hit. I feel like they're stealing dudes' produce at one point, and another people are just getting their car searched. It's a lot of bullshit, and it seems bad. But beyond that, there is this idea of sort of an untenable peace, I think, between Julio and Tenoch. So obviously they're friends when we meet at the beginning of the movie, and there's like some competition to them. And they're seeing who can swim further in the pool. It's a very boyish thing, right? Is to like, wrestle and see who's stronger, so you can swim farther in the pool, so who's bang more girls. And then we do this thing, and it's very childlike. And then when we meet Luisa, this is the object of their affections, right? In a way, like they're both like, yo, we're going to hang out with this older girl. Let's see who can get lucky first. And then, obviously that dynamic there is that they both get lucky and they're both mad about it, right? The idea is like, if you're a winner, you do want there to be a loser. And there's like some very interesting balance there, I think. Just insofar as however you'd want to view that, but there is something there. And then, one of the biggest things is that all this beefing going on, the only moment of like peace, and then it's right before we get to the beach, before there's kind of like this payoff, and we find this beautiful place that was hidden, this hidden gem, is that Luisa, it kind of chastises them about, you're both idiots, you want to bang each other, I'm just in the middle of this, you don't even care about me, really, it's a competition between y'all two. After Julio pushes her, she starts walking, and then when she gets back in the car, she's like, y'all broke all your manifestos, like, I don't care about that, you were lying, like, all that was a farce, so I'll set a manifesto, you're not going to touch me, you're not going to do this, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do this. And that's the only time where there isn't like this competition, where there isn't this chin checking, and we get very strange, like, long moments of silence that almost feel like uncomfortable. Obviously, we're kind of separate. We get that shot of Julio by himself under his little makeshift like flappy tent on the beach. She's just suntanning. Tenoch is down like in the water, and they're not really, we're kind of split up, right? It's a piece, but it's a piece by virtue of just space between these three. And so that's just an interesting way to look at that. Like, and her yelling at them outside the car is the competition of like, you guys want to bang each other, right? Like, their competition and them trying to brag to her in this very juvenile way that doesn't work. It's pretty funny because she's rolling her eyes and like teasing them, but it's like, it kind of sidelines their actual goal of like getting laid, is because they're both making fools of themselves in front of this lady. And so it's almost this idea of like destroying the chance before you even get there. And obviously it plays out a little different because, she ends up deciding to put it on both of them. But it's like, it's the same with the country to me, where there comes a point where like, two respective parties like warring over a place, like if in the process of the battle you destroy the entire area, you destroy the natural beauty of the place, right? What at the end, like, what have you fought for? And I think that's like a very worthwhile like idea and piece of this puzzle. Another cool thing that kind of ties it all back together is just this sort of, it's an idea of like destiny, I guess, of like fate, of like predetermination, fatalism, what have you, right? It's this, at the beginning, Tenoch doesn't get his dad's car because he won't take economics, and he like broke it at that party. He's like, I don't want to take econ. And what's really interesting is I feel like that's a very like hoity-toity, like Western, like kind of thing that a lot of people would roll their eyes at, right? This like a lot of people would be like, you're taking economics classes, like that's the Fresa thing, that's the you're a yuppie thing. So he's trying to like run from that, and I feel like that's what he doesn't want to be. But there comes this thing where through the bullfighting ring and through some of the dialogue and the exposition from the narrator, we learn that like his dad is kind of a poppin' politician, and he's making like a career out of it, and he's done some sketchy things. The thing becomes like economics, politics, these things, these ideas are kind of like not present with these sidelined people that we see, like these poor people in the countryside. They're not worried about economics, and I mean they are in a way, but they're not worried about like the lofty ideas. Like they're worried about like where's the next meal coming from, who are they going to try and take my land type swag. They're not worried about you know, Keynesian economics and bullshit, right? So it's kind of this language of the upper class in a way, I think, is what I see. And then his dad being in all that, like that's just the way his family's inclined. That's what they value, and that's why a lot of other people roll their eyes at them. In the end, they kind of both end up fulfilling these same roles. They fight it. It's this Greek thing where, like, you know, the more you fight your destiny, the more you end up right there. They both filled the spots that it seems like their parents wanted them to, right? I mean, Julio goes to a public school and he studies biology. I don't see too much there. Just, you know, pick a course for him. Except, you know, obviously biology is the study of like life, you know, but the body per se. But Tenoch ends up being an econ at the private university. And like to me, that's like very telling of just like to put your hands up and then let the waves take you almost. And then for him, for Louisa, the waves take her away. She sadly doesn't make it. For Tenoch, the waves take him right back up to where he was. They wash him right back up to where his parents were, because you can't fall that far down, especially if he just like takes the econ class, you know. And that scene between them at the end is rough. It's really gnarly. You know, I watched it over a couple times on YouTube because there's so many little things you miss, because Quran doesn't like spoon feed you, which I really love. But you know, obviously, like the voiceover is really good. You know, he says them getting coffee together was less awkward than making excuses to why they couldn't after they run into each other again. And we just get like a beautiful bow tie, not bow tie, like a tying of a bow on top of a gift, like perfect gift wrapping of all the things that we've kind of discussed here, right? So we talk about the class and then like where they both ended up. We got econ. They're both in university college, and he's like, oh yeah, private school starts before ours, you know? So there's a split there. We hear about David, their gay friend, and you can kind of see in their different reactions, like gauge what's going on there, you know? He's totally queening out. And Tenoch is like, and you see his face kind of freeze because they maybe did a little gay shit together. And you can tell that it doesn't bother Julio as much. Which I just don't know how to call the read there. I don't know if this is a comfortability thing, and like neither of them were. But the exploration of it is maybe what's more important than like what you find, I guess. I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say. But Julio doesn't seem as bothered by it. Tenoch has this pause, and he looks at him. And there's like a weirdness. And he's like, oh man, that sucks, after he says his dad kicks him out. And Tenoch is like, and Julio's like, no, dude, like, he's so happy. Like, he's living his thing. Like, escaping that is good for Julio, and I see that Tenoch is like stuck where he is, right? Like he's so worried about being poor and like touching the toilet seat that poor people touch. Like he's so stuck in what he's been kind of brought up in. It's the same with the econ. He's stuck back at econ. And you get this idea that Julio's not quite there. He seems a little more, I hate to use the word like liberated. It's not like that, but it seems like he's kind of like cast off these like inherited, like where you're supposed to go. He's kind of cast off the chains of fate or some bullshit like that, right? That's very interesting to me. And then he tries to light the cigarette and it won't work. It's like the spark's gone. The lighter won't work. There's nothing there. It's just grasping at nothing. Little poofs of smoke that turn to nothing. And then when they walk off, like they end the conversation very quickly, and the narrator says they will never meet again. And it's gnarly. It's like, you know, there is something there where it doesn't, I didn't read that as much as like a untenable piece between like class, middle class, upper class, like a lot of people have. I saw that as just this strange friendships come and go. People come and go out of your life. Like waves. You know, the tide comes in, the tide goes out. It didn't have much, you know, there wasn't much thinking about it. And there's something like beautifully sad about that. It's rough. It's rough. But the big thing that I didn't even notice, and it's just these full bodied characters that like I love to talk about, is like when they leave, or when Tenoch leaves because his girlfriend's waiting on him to go to the movies. I didn't even realize like Julio like looks out the window and he looks all sad, and it looks like he's trying to catch somebody's, like, he's just looking out the window and he's like being somber, and he looks like he's kind of like choking up a little bit. And I never noticed that Tenoch is walking by the window until like the fifth time I watched this movie, third time I watched the ending scene on YouTube. And then it looks like he's trying to catch his eye. Like he's trying to like get that last like, I'll see you later, dude. And Tenoch is just checked out. Like he's just gone. Just walk right by. And you know, viewing that, like having that through the window, when we talk about earlier, like the windows and the mirrors and stuff, like there's something between them then, you know? And this is just like, I don't know, man. Beautiful, beautiful top to bottom filmmaking. Yeah, just through and through and through. Tenoch doesn't even bat an eye. And then Julio's just left there, and then it sounds like his voice is about to crack, and he's like, yeah, I'm ready for the check. And we cut to credits. And like, it's one of my favorite like ending scenes in a movie, just because it wraps everything up, but it's not exactly how you'd like, and it feels real, and it hurts in the way that real things hurt. Wow. I mean, what else can you say about it? It's beautiful, beautiful. And I love it. And there's a lot of like people in the YouTube comments that are all just kind of like picking apart the scene, which is fun. Some of it you roll your eyes, but some of it there's some stuff there, and it's pretty cool. Somebody left a quote on it that I want to share. Yeah, here we go. So, in that ending, you know, I was reading through like the YouTube comments, and someone shared this Jane Austen quote from Persuasion, and I thought it was really gnarly. There could have never been two hearts so open, no tastes so similar, no feelings so in unison, no countenances so beloved. Now they were as strangers, nay, worse than strangers, for they could never become acquainted. It was a perpetual estrangement. Ow. Vida y muerte, man. Obviously, I see a big circle of life through this whole thing. You'd be a fool not to. The big like mirrored shots I think of are them whacking off into the pool, the nut dropping into the pool, and then them diving into the pool naked. It's obviously like the babiest a person could be is the nut, and then you know them growing up, like them diving into the pool as a 19-year-old, an 18-year-old, what have you, right? We see that change there. There's a before and after, like almost. And so that's where I see the circle of life. And I see the circle of life with Mexico. I see the death and decay of the old, and that's ushering in the new. And like, that's good for some people. That's good for Tenoch and his dad. They're going to international summits, and it's bad for all these people in the pueblos that we pass by. There's like a give and take here. It's just like the dance. It's just like the sex. It's very, very important, and it all kind of ties together. For me, the other thing with the life and death is like the beginning of this is like sort of, you know, teenager sex, like they're banging like their girlfriends, and it's like the send off, and then the sex at the end is almost like a death in a way, because we don't get to see her again. They're not friends anymore afterwards. At the beginning, it's almost like sex is a union, and then at the end, it's almost like sex is a departure from each other. And you would think maybe it would bring them closer together at the end, by virtue of them learning stuff over the course of the road trip, but life isn't pretty like that. And then obviously, the death that we have looming over the whole thing just colors everything a different color. It's like a different shade. Knowing that she's going to die in your second and third watch, everything she does kind of makes more sense. It's about her trying to like maximize the rest of the life before she dies. Obviously, these kids are like traveling around, and they're trying to have the most fun they can with it. And there's something about like maximizing your life there before you die, but like when you're presented with death, it becomes even more real. And that's her big thing of give yourself to the waves, you know, and that shit really fucks me up when the narrator says it every time of, you know, life is in the waves, you know, give yourself to the foam. I can't remember exactly what she says, but there's like some beautiful stuff with the waves and the baptism here. There's a rebirth going on at the beach we've made it to the mouth of heaven. And there's, heaven, right? Where do you go when you die if you're good? Heaven. Where do they go? Where does she end up dying? Heaven's mouth. It really feels like almost some, like the opposite of Dante's Inferno kind of thing. It's them going to heaven, For them, it's like this sexual escapade with this older lady. For her, it's getting to relive like all the beautiful like colors of life before she dies, like one last time. Like for her, this is about regaining like some semblance of control, right? When she's been cheated on, and then she's had this like shit go of things. She's had to deal with her aunt dying. She's had to deal with her husband's whole family dying and him being a bitch baby about it. It's about her just getting to live like one last time. And that's really gnarly and like really heavy. And like the biggest thing with that to me is this is one of the only movies where I laugh out loud 10, 15 times and I cry several tears 5, 7, 10 times, right? And it's just that oscillation of the happy, sad, real, awful, truth, lie. And we just kind of bounce between those two for everything, right? Like it's them having sex and you kind of go, that was funny though. Like maybe that's how it was once upon a time when you're just like a young baby in the world and you don't know how things go. And then she's crying on the phone and you go, when you watch the second and third time, she's dying. Like she is dying and it's an awful weight to bear. There's an ugly gravity to it. And it shows you like both ends of the circle, we're burning on both ends of the terminal. Right. And I mean, like I said earlier, the film kind of ends in death. She dies, but we don't get to know that until our two friends know that over breakfast, and they're never going to see each other again. I think that's very symbolic too, is the death of the friendship, because maybe for Julio it was meant to be something more, or he would have liked for it to be something more, but the shot at that fell short, and then it dissolved. For Luisa, life was supposed to be so much more. She didn't just want to be, a dental technician, but then she was diagnosed and it fell short. These things dissolved into the foam of the sea, right? Like we see the culture dying, like we see people's ways of life dying. We see the political system as we know it in Mexico dying. At the end with the voiceover of the political party changing for the first time in 71 years. There's something super symbolic in all of this where there's like 15 different lines of change, life, and death like running through this at every single moment. And you're just left sitting there and you feel the blood coursing through your veins. You feel how warm it is and you need to go do something about it. And like, what else do you watch movies for, dude? What else do you read books for? What else do you do anything for except to feel, reinforced in this idea of like how powerful this thing is, how powerful this 80, 90, 100 years you get on this planet are. What's more powerful than find your beach? What's more powerful than reaching the mouth of heaven? What's more powerful than defying the diagnosis? What's more powerful than saying no and walking away when you'd like? Wow. This is just one of them ones. And it's an easy 6 out of 5 for me. And it's probably my favorite movie. Talk to you guys next time.